Hello and welcome back to Hold On I'm Talking Brother. My name is Joe Greenwood and you are listening to our preview of UFC 300, which is headlined by Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill for the light heavyweight title, with the co-main event of Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan for the women's strawweight title, with the featured fight of Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF title, with another featured fight of Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan in the lightweight division. As per usual, I'm joined by my regular co-host Tom Ballum. Tom, simple, concise, cutting question for you. What is the main event of UFC 300?
Ever since it was announced, it's been the main event. Nothing has changed that. It has to be for the BMF belt. Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, both paid in full, to borrow Dustin Poirier's catchphrase there. Great legacies, great highlights, fan favourites, and a very interesting matchup. For me, that is the biggest fight on the card.
I absolutely agree. That is the main event. It's a great example of, you want to see these two guys fight, don't you? And we all go, yes, we do. And then they do. And hopefully it'll be amazing. But listeners, it's not the fight that we're going to start with our preview of UFC 300. We will start with what is billed as the main event. Listeners, we're going to break down this main card here, going from the top down. Me and Tom are going to make picks for each fight. If we get the fighter correct, who wins, that's 1 point. And if we get the method right as well, that's 2 points. 10 points on offer. Your boy Joe Greenwood, defending champion right now. Tom, it hurts him deep in his soul to know that I'm the champion. And do you know who was also a champion? Alex Pereira. And do you know who was a former champion? Jamal Hill. And they will sort out their business in the cage this Saturday in the main event of UFC 300. Light heavyweight title on the line. A weird fight, in my humble opinion. It's kind of sort of come out of nowhere. It's not quite what you'd want for a UFC 300 main event. Doesn't quite have a freak show nature to it. It has the nature of keeping the division on track. Let's just get Alex out there fighting other guys and making sure this title is defended at some point. That's my humble opinion of what it is.
I'm not going to say you're wrong, Joe. It's like many of the fights on this card. There's something missing in the narrative, in the story between the fighters and where they are in their careers. It's just not quite that peak, It's not Adesanya fighting Pereira at light heavyweight.
No.
It's not Yuri perhaps getting his rematch against Pereira. So, yeah, it's a really good fight, and we should be excited for it. I think the main thing that's amazing to think about here is, if we were looking back 3 years ago and we said, all right, UFC 300, what's our main event? I honestly think you could go through 1,000 matchups before anyone would say this. I think really 1,000.
Wait, the guy who got... Yeah, the main event of UFC 300 is a guy who's not debuted and a guy who just lost to Paul Craig by submission. Will be headlining main event of UFC 300. Yeah, I think you're right to say that. It's an interesting matchup in terms of the meta narrative of Jamal giving up the title because he got injured, and then Alex coming in after beating Adesanya and then losing to him, and then going up a division to what is, in theory, his natural weight class. So there's that side of it, but it's there's no tension, and I think that's kind of what we expect with the 100 cards. UFC 100, Lesnar versus Mir, it had a fiery main event narrative. UFC 200 was going to be Conor and Nate, fell apart.
Brock and DC.
DC and Jones, that fell apart. That was supposed to be the main event, if you remember. Brock and DC was the summer after when DC and Brock got into that shoving match, if you remember correctly. It was Brock
I really think they wanted... sorry to get into this now. I'm pretty sure it was supposed to be Brock and DC, and then Brock couldn't make it, so they put Anderson Silva in there going up. I think they then tried to make the fight again, and they had that weird shoving match. But I think...
Oh, DC, right.
write in and correct us, listeners. But yeah, I get you, Joe. The tension, it's not there. It's because these guys are not. They don't have a big history in the light heavyweight division. They're not long reigning champs. They don't have that much of a story to them. And of course, Pereira is new to the division. Full stop. That doesn't mean that either of them are like non-deserving of fighting for a belt. I mean, Jamahal Hill injured as the champ, having beaten Teixeira. Of course, Pereira's longtime training partner and mentor, beat him pretty badly. In Brazil, there was not much doubt about that. And then here we've got Pereira, who just put away Prochazka, a man who had an amazing fight with Glover himself. So like if you look into it, there is some story there. It's just a bit of a weird matchup. But here we go. Two strikers, Alex Pereira. We should be happy.
Yeah, we should be happy. Do you want to go into the X's and O's of this fight then, of like what these guys bring to the table?
Yeah, let's do that.
So there's a big thing here that they're talking about, which is, this is going to probably be a stand-up fight for the most part, and that will favour Pereira. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say at all. I think that also people saying that Alex has bad striking defence, they're not wrong either. But the reason why he has bad striking defence is because he is so adamant on making sure that his attacking arsenal is available to him at all times, and in doing that sacrifices defensive capabilities. I feel like he's quite square on, he's quite boxy, his hands are very low, they're both kind of like, they're almost like parallel with each other in terms of their positioning, kind of like low gunslinger sort of hands, and that he throws at sort of weird angles upwards and to the body, and the sort of like low slashing calf kick. He really did invest in that since moving up to light heavy.
Joe, you don't want to be bewitched by that though. You don't want to be Yuri Prochazka and think, oh,
yeah,
he's wide open.
Yeah,
exactly. Let me come wading into that space.
Yes, yeah.
Boom, short right hook, and then obviously the deadliest of weapons, the left. The best in the sport, most people are saying.
I would say so. Any combo that ends with Pereira throwing the left hook at the end of it is about as deadly as it gets in the sport, to the point where I actually think it would translate up to heavyweight if he was able to land it on someone. The
thing is, though, of course, I appreciate what you're saying. When it's in the end of the combination, that left hook, and he's fully turning into it and he's generating full power. But also what I think what makes it special is the diversity he has with that left hook. It could be a short check as well. He can not turn into it, and he still carries so much power. And the accuracy, of course. It's not easy to go in there for 5 rounds with Alex Pereira and not get hit by the left hook.
Exactly. And the only way you really avoid it is if you knock him out like Adesanya did. And for Adesanya to do that, he had to bait him into a sort of exchange along the fence where Pereira's thinking like, well, I'm about to finish this dude, and it did look like it, but he'd just fallen into the trap instead for Adesanya to then knock him out. So that's what you have to tell Jamahal Hill, is how do you get around that? How do you damage this guy? And I think that Hill, something that is going to be of benefit to him is the fact that he does switch stances, and I think he will find success more in the southpaw. I think if he's in that position, it will take out the low calf kick, I think, for the most part. I think Pereira will still throw it. I think he'll still throw it to the inside of the calf, but I think it won't be there as much. But to be honest, he doesn't give much recoil on that as a kick. Like, he doesn't like... It's not like Cejudo where he like steps in and throws it all the way through the body. He's just like, yeah, I'll just cut at you a little bit. I don't have to throw it. It's
very nonchalant. But I mean, that's what we said about that Prochazka fight, is that ultimately he put Prochazka in that position that he needed to take that risk, because those little low chopping kicks that are so hard to check, and as you say, they don't create huge openings.
No.
They can do some serious damage.
Yes, absolutely. And then you find yourself like, I've got to try and blitz in on this guy to close the space, but because your leg has been compromised, you can't go in as quickly as you would like to, and then you find yourself kind of stuck in this mid-range, and then in comes the left hook. Like, it's a really simple setup when you think about it, like what the game plan is, which is to sort of like slow you down so that when you do come in, you know, you're not able to go quickly in and out or quickly all the way in. It's, it keeps you stranded.
That was a question I had actually going in here, and perhaps you can answer it for us. I mean, how do we see this fight taking place? Because for me, Jamahal Hill, he's pretty good on the outside, Joe. He's pretty comfortable there. And I don't, like, he's got good range. And he's, for me, that's been a key tool for him. He's been able to execute well using his range.
Yeah.
So are we going to see, Pereira kind of marching in forwards? That building pressure, that kind of zombie-like presence where he walks you down, and he's always just right there. He's always not quite out of that space, and you just don't get any break in the pressure. Or are we going to see Hill, step in and try to push Pereira back? What do you expect to see?
Oh, man. That's interesting. Because I think it's really dependent on who is going to be able to set the terms of like their game plan. Because if it's Pereira and he's able to march forward, I think Hill is going to struggle to get through that. I think he'll have to rely on like jabbing out, like jabbing to push Pereira back. It's the classic thing. Double up the jab, and he might be able to push Pereira backwards and start to build the momentum that way. And if you can throw kicks to the body as well, that is something that will be beneficial to Hill. If I'm going into my mind's eye of how this fight is mostly going to be fought, I think it will be with Pereira walking forward and pushing Hill back, because I think if Hill is able to push forward and get into clinch exchanges, in the sense of actually not being in elbow range or anything like that, but chest to chest pressure up against the cage, digging for underhooks, I think that will be a difficult space for Pereira to be in. So I think that will be something that Pereira will be cognizant of.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you think Hill is at any point going to go for a takedown in this fight? Yeah,
I do. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I just don't. I don't think you can game plan Alex Pereira and not mix in that option. Yeah, I think that even as a plan B, and if it's going to be a plan B, then probably you're going to need to use it. If you know what I'm saying, like Pereira is going to put you in that space, we have to add that element. So yeah, I do expect Hill to mix in both, grappling, clinch work, and potentially ducking in on a single leg if that opportunity comes up. Like
what Prohashka did in their fight, where he like ducked down for a takedown and came up with the punch.
Yeah, and what happened to me, Joe, is I got seduced by that going into that fight, and I thought, okay, well, Prohashka will do that, and
Yuri's smart enough to do that, yeah,
absolutely, and in doing so, that was his undoing to a certain extent.
Yeah,
it was a great showing for Pereira. I think he's had many great showings, and it's like don't underestimate the guy, of course.
No,
but just because of the way he's come into the sport, that he doesn't have that back catalogue, that he hasn't been shown all these looks. I just keep expecting him to be undone, and I've been getting it wrong. We'll see if I've got it wrong this time as well.
We'll see in a second. We'll go into our predictions in a moment. There's one last technical thing I want to bring up, and it's a massive flaw of Hill's, which is when he actually switches stance, and sometimes he'll like punch forward and then switch stances into that. And what he'll do is, imagine like he's in like southpaw. What he'll do is he'll take his rear left leg and bring it forward, and he'll bring it in front of his right foot, and it's almost like he's doing like a pirouette. Like you'll see his feet doing that quite a lot. You'll see him rocking onto the heel of his lead foot, which is not good. You will get knocked down with that if you're facing a big punch, and Pereira is definitely that. So I have worries for Hill in that regard of like being caught in these spaces where his feet are close together, or he's rocking back on his lead foot. That could be a potential very big problem for him. The thing is that like Hill has got all like these flaws that I see, and as does Pereira, but it's like I don't think Pereira will ever change them, and I feel like Hill has the potential to do that. Do you know what I mean? Like I think Pereira is kind of like, it's set in stone. This is how he's going to fight. Okay, win, lose or draw, and it's just down to you whether you're going to be able to wade through to avoid that left hook. And I think, by the way, circling to Pereira's right, that's not a good enough plan to do that either. It's just like, well, I'm just going to walk away from it. that's not enough in my mind.
No, and of course he can frame you, into his left hook. He's made a career off
Exactly.
of that. Yeah, it's funny. I think you mentioned a good point there about Hill. It's almost like he's still a prospect.
Yeah, he very much is.
Despite being a former champ. And part of that, Joe, something I want to talk about here, is Jamahal Hill's record.
Yeah.
Which hasn't had that much scrutiny. But, if we're going to say, like, you have to be 8 out of 10 to be a champ,
Yeah.
You might be a 7 out of 10 and you just get that shot and it comes off for you. But if you're saying like the champ is usually 8 out of 10, sometimes they're 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 fighters. I want to see how many 8 out of 10s do you see in this record. I'm gonna throw out some names.
You mean like 8 out of 10 performances?
No. I mean like that fighter has that caliber to win the belt, and I'm saying usually you need to be like. You don't have to be the best fighter to ever do it. You don't have to be perfect.
No.
But you've got to be pretty damn good, usually.
Yeah. And
I think it's fair to say that Jamahal Hill himself is probably an 8 out of 10. For example, just to try to set the bar there, all right?
Okay, within the current framework of the current light heavyweight division, let's say so for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Like how
maybe
the
not
sport has
historically
evolved to this point. No, well, I mean, like, you mentioned that Crow Cop was a favourite fighter of yours. Nowadays, Crow Cop, he's going to have a lower rating than he was in his era. Of course, the sport has evolved.
I don't know. At heavyweight currently, I think... I don't know, man.
Yeah, I've opened a can of worms there.
Yeah,
but I think you understand the stage I'm setting here, all right?
I understand
what
you're
saying. You've got to be at
yeah.
least out of 8 out of 10, that man could win the belt, Yeah. 9 out of 10, that man probably will, unless he gets injured. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
All right, so Ovince Peru.
Sure, definitely not even a 6 out of 10. Let's go.
Paul Craig.
Yeah. Sure, okay, not an 8 out of 10. I say that much.
He lost that, by the way. The next of these are wins. Jimmy Crute.
Sure, he's a fighter in the light heavyweight division. Again, not an 8 out of 10.
Johnny Walker.
No, not an 8 out of 10.
6.5 or a 7. Thiago Santos after blowing his knees out against Jones.
Pre-Jones, I would say is maybe a 7 out of 10. Post-Jones, he's a 5.
Yeah, not great, Joe. Not great. Of course, then he's got the win over Glover. A Glover who is 43. All right, there is an asterisk there. Of course, Glover, love you, man, love you. But
love Glover.
I'm just saying, Jamahal Hill, he does not have that body of work. And perhaps we're gonna find out his level here at UFC 300. What is your
Pereira's got a better body of work than Hill.
Oh, that's that. I don't need to address that. I mean, Jan
Prohashka, Adesanya, Strickland.
Yeah, I mean Jan Prohashka, Adesanya, and Jan. They're all men who can win belts and of course have. So, yeah.
Pereira by knockout.
Yeah, that is logical, Joe, and that is what makes you a champion.
Yes.
I regret my pick. It's Jamahal Hill. It's by decision. Time away from the sport, Joe. Time away from the sport. It might have gone to my head.
You know I'm the one that's been drinking, right? Not you.
Yeah. You know, as soon as we started recording, I was like, what? I was looking through my picks here, and I was questioning my logic. I've done it. I guess what I'm thinking is there's a vulnerability to Pereira.
Yes.
You know, and I saw that same vulnerability when I picked Yuri to beat him. And you know, if Adesanya and Pereira fight again, I'm probably going to see the same thing again. And it's not served me well so far, but it's there, and I think Hill is an underdog. He's, as we've just done, easily written off. But, you know, he's had a long time out of the sport. He's been preparing solely for this fight, and he's a more well-rounded mixed martial artist than Pereira.
Why was Hill out of the sport for so long?
Well, the injury.
Which was to his Achilles on his left leg.
Yeah,
that's why I think he'll be southpaw a lot, and when he's orthodox, Pereira with those slashing calf. I'm sorry, man. Like, Hill is a decent fighter, but I think he could be in for a bad night, a very bad night.
Yeah, I totally agree, and yeah, I'm certainly questioning this one. But you stay honourable to the cause, to the creed. I put pen to paper. That's my pick.
I can't believe. So you've never picked Pereira to win? You picked Strickland to beat him. I remember that.
Oh my lord! Don't.
Yeah.
Don't.
Wow.
I'm not a hater. I love the man. I love the man. I love the man. I mean, do you remember him fighting that Greek lad?
Terrible! Yeah, terrible performance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just can't get that out of my mind. I just don't think is he better than then? Like his key skills are just as good. Hopefully, they could be waning, but probably they're just as good. But his deficiencies are only going to be marginally better.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. So yeah, I mean, I was happy to pick him then. I was happy to pick him over Strickland. I think I picked him over Adesanya for the second fight. I got those wrong way round. Those ones. So yeah, I don't know.
All right, Joe, you're bathing in victory a bit too soon. We're gonna find out Saturday night, boy. We're gonna find out.
Fair enough. Right. I think it's because Buckley is Hill's friend. That's why you picked this, isn't it? Because
if you're associated with Joaquin Buckley, I want to know you.
Okay, fair enough.
Man, right. Joe, I sent you that promo card. Sorry, you mentioned his name, Joaquin Buckley.
The king.
I sent you that when he called to be made the headliner of a Dirtless in St. Louis. Man, the charisma on this guy.
Yeah.
Like, the sky should be the limit. Every time I see him, I love him. I love listening to that man. Yeah, so he should be headlining UFC 400.
Okay. God, my God, could you imagine? God almighty, Buckley versus Pereira. There we go. That's UFC 400. Right, co-main event. I'm going to make a prediction now. We don't have a lot to talk about with this one because we kind of always want to get to Keiichi Holloway as quickly as possible. Yan Xiaonan is going to be facing Zhang Weili, defending strawweight champion. A weird fight that probably should have been held in China. Two Chinese women fighting for the title. That would have been pretty major, but the UFC don't seem to be interested in doing stuff like that anymore. I'm going to frame this right now. Zhang Weili is the best women's fighter in the world, and Yan Xiaonan very much is not the best women's fighter in the world, and I don't see a path for victory for Xiaonan in this fight. Oof. I'm going to straight up say that.
That's cutting criticism to open the preview, Joe. Leave some uncertainty as to your pick. You spilt your beans.
Sorry. It's just I did tape study on this fight, and watching Yan Xiaonan almost armbar herself against Carla Esparza, who then proceeds to get mollywopped by Zhang Weili on the ground, is pretty interesting. I think there was that fight where Xiaonan had that fight against Mackenzie Dern, where Dern kept getting into the ground, but Xiaonan was able to survive because Dern has no ground and pound. It's just submission attacks, and if you are just very tight and pressed up against the body and don't allow any space, you can survive that sort of thing. But against Esparza was able to batter her on the ground, often from crucifix, a position that Weili loves, and Weili has fallen in love with the wrestling side of things. So I can foresee that happening. I can imagine Weili taking her to the ground and wailing on her. See what I did there? And I don't know. I could see this being a bit of a one-sided beatdown. I think if Xiaonan is to win, though, I think it will be way on the outside and frustrating Weili with lateral movement. That's what I think. Defending the takedown. If she can defend the takedown and stay on the outside, she can win this fight. But I just don't foresee that happening.
Frustrating Weili on the outside. Joe, we got 25 minutes of this. That sounds... Yeah, but if you're going to win the title... That sounds brutal for the fans, I'm saying it.
If you're going to win the title against Weili and you're Yan Xiaonan, that's how you have to do it.
Yeah, which is, again, I don't want to dump on this fight. It's not fair to do it. It's not right to do it. But it's...
Because Weili's brilliant.
It's UFC 300.
Yeah.
Like this is your prep for the main event. This is, who's popping in Vegas for Yan Xiaonan? Where is the Yan Xiaonan fan base? I just don't think they're there. And as you say, if she's to win, it's probably going to be a dreadful fight.
Yeah.
Best case scenario is Weili smoking her, and
I think that's the likely one.
So how have you got the method of victory then?
KO, and I'm actually going to envision the crucifix ground and pound for
Oh my
Whaley.
god.
Yeah, I think it's going to be one of them. Elbows from short range, maybe. I don't know. It could be really quite harsh. One of Whaley's trainers, tape study people, is on Twitter. They got this account, I think it's called like Ghost or Ghost Town. And you see training footage of Whaley, and you see some of the tape study stuff that he does in like these animations that are very good. And like, he's animated like Yan Xiaonan stuff where you can like look at her, and he just posts it kind of with the comment of what you're watching, and you see the immediate flaws of what Xiaonan does, and I'm like, this guy has spotted it. They're training this. I think this could be a very rough 5 to 7 minutes for Yan Xiaonan. Yeah, I think this could be a rough one for her. So yeah, Whaley knockout.
Over here, I've picked a Whaley decision, as is the nature of things. Yeah,
yes.
Yan Xiaonan. I'm just playing the odds here, Joe. You know, Yan Xiaonan is. Has she shown vulnerability to finishes? No, I haven't seen that in her career. But I will confess, I haven't been a devout follower of her career, in the same way that you have in your dark room over there in Malta, blinds down and up to your business. Very dark. I don't ask. That's your thing. So I trust that you do know better about these fighters. But yeah, of course, Yan Xiaonan. Like the fight that comes to mind is the Andrade fight.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Which I've absolutely dumped on Andrade a few times. I'm on record there because it's hilariously poor from her. Of course, if Whaley obliges in the same way, then there is that. Yan Xiaonan does have that in her locker, but I very much doubt we'll see that here. It's a decision for Whaley, and I hope that you're right. Let's just say that, Joe.
Yeah, I hope so as well. Now,
I'm going to be less down on my picks from this point on, because now we're going to get to it.
The good stuff. Main event in our hearts and in our underwear is Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF title. A great fight. A great fight. This is superb. Max moving up to lightweight, and Max saying, last time I did this I had 6 weeks, this time I've had 12. Kind of demonstrating he's built up a bit of muscle mass, looks heavier, doesn't look like he's just not cut weight, looks like he's filled into the vision a little bit. Not too much where he's going to take away the physical benefits that he had of being a featherweight, the pace that he could maybe put on Gaethje, the deftness of his movement as well. But he faces the bludgeoning Justin Gaethje here, Tom. Let's go with overall thoughts first before we go into the nitty gritty of this. You've slightly picked at me because of my worry for Max Holloway and his future and some of his recent performances. You don't see what I see, or you feel like I'm projecting something.
No,
are you?
Like, all right,
yeah, go on.
I'm charged up already. You got me. I told you. I'm going to let you have it.
I've rattled you
right now. Right now. I just think you don't put any respect on the man's name, and like he's like a legacy fighter. Like he's a bygone era that we've moved past. He was comprehensively beaten by Volkanovski in the third fight. It was a bad look. I never want to see them fight again. All right. Yeah. However, you have to look at the evidence outside of that, where he's just been absolutely crushing all the challenges that come ahead of him. One of them was your pick for the champion of the division, Arnold Allen.
Yep.
He was ahead, and he was ahead comfortably. He didn't even need to get out of second gear, and that is the caliber of the man. I don't think that he has... His stock has clearly gone down, but that's not because of his performances in the cage.
For me, it's part of the performances in the cage. The issue I had with the Arnold Allen fight was Allen getting into a long-range jousting match with Max Holloway. And it was just like, whenever he did his best work in that fight, Allen, it was pushing inside and getting inside the long-range attacks of Holloway. And then in that 5th round, which I gave to Alan, he was like, he was landing some shots on Holloway. The Yair fight where Holloway had to break out the clinch and wrestling game. That 3rd Volkanovski fight, which I know you want to dismiss it, but it is part of it.
Well, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying we found out who the better man is. And,
yeah, we did.
And that better man is one of the greatest of all time.
I'm just saying, compare Max in the 2nd Aldo fight, where Aldo is like landing bombs on him, and it doesn't faze him in the slightest, to Max in the Arnold Allen fight, in the Yair fight, in the 3rd Volk fight, where he looks buzzed after some shots. He did look buzzed after them, and it was like, I've never seen Max like that before. And that is only from wear and tear. And now he moves up a division to face Justin Gaethje. Do you not feel like there is some worry for you with him going into this fight, considering past performances? You can't tell me that like Max now is of the same granite chin as the guy who fought Aldo or the guy that fought Ortega.
He's never been knocked down. This is madness. Well, this is a crazy conversation. He's landed the most strikes in UFC history, and he's never been knocked down. Like, what is going on? I'm just on Max's team here, Joe. Like, he's having to listen to this nonsense non-stop. He's been overlooked, and he's just, despite that, he just gets back to work and puts away your top contenders.
He is maybe the most fan favourite fighter out there. So for me to say like he's been continually put, or for you to say he's been continually put down, is nonsense.
He has. The fact that people aren't crying out for him to fight now for his belt at featherweight, it's just a travesty for guys like Topuria.
He lost to Volk 3 times.
The division has moved on. He lost razor close fight the first 2 times, and Volk has bested him.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he's finished. Like, that doesn't mean I know you picked Topuria over Holloway, and of course most people should, after to put the nature of Topuria's win over a man that we hold in the highest esteem we could, Alexander Volkanovski. But Max is number 1 contender. People are bored of him because he just keeps beating everybody, not because he's declined in some way. He lost to Volk. We can't see that fight again. He's beaten everybody else. Max keeps saying they kept Topuria away from him. He thinks it's all built on a sham. He thinks they wanted to prop up their new
which was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do to keep him away from Max.
Just saying that acknowledges just how damn good Max is.
Max is great. He's great. He's an all-time
great. He may well be the champ in featherweight again, and he may well reign for another 5 years. That's potentially. How good he is. Potentially. But let's talk about this fight. Justin Gaethje. This fight is amazing. Right, I'm going to get into this fight now, Joe. Justin Gaethje.
Yeah, you go. You tell me about Gaethje.
I'm going. I'm because you know.
I've set you off. The firework display started. Get going.
It's a great fight. Everyone keeps framing it by the Poirier fight. Poirier fight was 4 years ago, like you said, on 6 weeks' notice, and Max put in a great show.
Yep.
And his chin was iron against brutal hooks from Poirier. It was quite a close fight, as I recall.
There was a couple dings in that iron. There was a couple dings there, but he wasn't he took it.
Most people are getting dropped, Joe.
Okay, here's what I'll give Max credit for in that Poirier fight. There were shots where he got dinged in it. Poirier starts to pour it on, and then Poirier would throw 20 shots, of which maybe 4 landed. Like Holloway's in the fire blocking is fantastic. And here's my issue for Gaethje going into this fight, is that he just is not a volume puncher in the way that Poirier is, and he very much is not in the way that Holloway is. So that is my issue with coming to this Gaethje.
Gaethje's become a stalker. Like, he's, after his own showdown with Dustin Poirier the first time round, we've talked about it in great detail. When I called that fight the second time, I explained why I'd picked Gaethje to win that fight, and that was because of the nature of his evolution. Now that same nature, as you say, Joe, it could be his undoing in this fight.
You mean the sort of more cerebral, less pushing forward, leg kicks in the clinch style?
Sounds like the perfect tapestry for Max to pitter-patter you and hurt you like that, get off, the Calvin Cater treatment, Joe, is what I'm saying.
I mean, you know that thing that they always talk about with the Diaz brothers, where they're like, oh, they'll throw 10 shots where they kind of like touch you, and then they'll throw one that really stings you. That's Max Holloway. That's not the Diaz brothers that you're talking about. Max Holloway does that for real at a championship level, at a top contender level. The Diaz brothers do it in a kind of like sloppy version of that. Max is this refined, thoughtful striker. Go watch the Zombie fight. He opens with a 4-shot combo in which he only lands one shot because the other 3 are all feints. Like, he throws feints. He throws stuff to get you reacting. He's not just throwing stuff for the sake of throwing it. Like that Kesa fight, it was very meticulous, well-planned, well-drilled, striking combinations. That's what did for Kesa in that fight. My issue with this Gaethje fight is, one, the power of Gaethje. That one-shot, massive monster power he has. The fact that, once he hurts you, it can be an avalanche. And the leg kicks. The problem is he doesn't really throw the leg kicks in the same way as he used to. Also, another positive for Gaethje is the jab. Again, an issue with that, though, is he doesn't throw it that often. Like that Fiziev fight, it was 1-1 going into the third, and he finally starts jabbing him in the third round. If he had jabbed him from the first round, he could have finished him. He just doesn't throw the jab. If he threw the jab more, Gaethje would be an even more prolific finisher. So if he can throw that against Holloway, I think that could be interesting. But it depends on if he starts doing it quickly enough. I think Gaethje could be one of these where he starts like falling in love with the power a bit too much. And overthrowing. Remember the Oliveira fight where he was throwing so hard he fell over? Anyway.
I mean, yeah, he's still Justin Gaethje, Joe. Still bites on them shots, and that's why he's this rock star that he is.
He's a legend.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And worthy holder of the BMF belt. I didn't buy into that, but what else do you do with a fight like this? And it's the same thing where, like, it started off as this like meme thing for guys who were a bit washed but still had star power. And now it's like, okay, guys who are still proven they're there at the top level, like Dustin putting away Benoit Saint-Denis. It grounds it in this whole new level of, like quality.
Violence.
It's like proven. Yeah, violence, absolutely. I mean, if you're Holloway's coaches for this team, for this fight, sorry, if you're in the team of coaches, what do you want to see from him at the start of the fight? Because
pressure.
You mentioned the leg kicks of Gaethje, right? We know that Max is actually pretty well adapted to fighting under the pressure of those leg kicks,
for sure.
as he did ultimately come up short. But he adapted through the Volkanovski fights.
Yeah, Volkanovski maybe the best calf kicker in terms of game planning I've seen. Better than even Adesanya, to be honest. Pressure is the main thing. Pressure, because Gaethje, when he gets pressured, he has crumbled. He has crumbled. The Khabib one being the hilarious example of that. The podcast Heavy Hands called it Gaethje on ice, as he was just like skating around the ring as like Khabib just charged at him.
I mean, I'm on record already about that fight. Like, that was one of the most terrifying demonstrations of the skill gap between the champ and the contender. Not just skill gap. I like, what do you say about the performance? I mean, Khabib just walked through him like he was nothing. Yeah. He had no regard for Gaethje's power.
No,
I think you don't want to see Max fight like that.
And I think it was bullshit, by the way. The thing that Khabib said, where he's just like, oh, I was close to being done with what he was landing on me. He wasn't close to being done at all. He was just being nice. He was nice. He was being nice, and that's what a great champion does. I'm telling Max, you got to pressure this guy. Again, the Oliveira Gaethje fight. Oliveira starts charging him down, and Gaethje's flustered. Like he starts swinging wildly, and the Oliveira knockdown, which leads to submission in the first round. If you see it, Gaethje's feet are basically next to each other. Like, he stood like that, and he takes a monster shot from Oliveira, goes down, and then gets subbed. I don't think Holloway has that sort of Oliveira power. But that pressure, I think it could get to Gaethje. I think he could get to it. It's just whether he's going to be able to sit on his shots and land big power punches to pressure Max. Because then he has to... Really, Gaethje has to push forward. He has to push forward. But he's not been that game for a while, Tom. He's not been that game for a while. Is there anything else you want to say on this fight?
No, I think we've summed it up well there. Just underlining that thing that Gaethje's evolution, which he's been much praised for, might actually be his undoing here in this fight, and that's quite an interesting dynamic going into it.
Yeah,
the original Gaethje, wading through the fire and trading blow for blow.
Michael Johnson.
Yeah, Michael. I think it's just too much for Max. That is just too much smoke to handle, and that's with all the love in the world for Max. But a more calculated, smarter Gaethje, now we're talking Max Holloway can implement his game plan, and that's what I've gone for. Max Bless,
Whoa.
I picked you, boy. I've picked you. I've gone for a decision.
Wow. Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this one a lot, and I'm happy with my pick, which is I've gone for Max Holloway, and I've gone with a decision. I think Gaethje will land hard on him. He's going to land hard in the first round, and I think if Max can get through that, Max is actually a very good adjuster, and I think he's going to realise that, and he's going to have to just push forward through this. And that Poirier experience from 5 years ago now, that will influence and inspire Max through this performance. So I've gone for a Max Holloway decision as well, Tom.
Good man.
Let's continue in the lightweight division. Charles Oliveira, the champ has a name, and it's Charles Oliveira. He is back, and he's facing Arman Tsarukyan in what I presume this is the number one contenders fight now. I mean, I know that Poirier seems to be having the fight with Makhachev now, but that's some number one bullshit, brother. That's just to give Makhachev a fresh name.
If they got it locked in, and I think that was the idea, Makhachev Poirier, get it signed off before anything goes down here at UFC 300. Because, come on, Joe, you're not going out there putting out a monster performance and then not getting a title shot here.
Right.
If the schedules line up, if you can fight on Makhachev terms, wherever Makhachev wants to fight, probably in the Middle East. Then,
in Abu Dhabi in October,
Yeah, right. And that's what I'm saying. The only question mark would be, you take damage. If they were going to try and make, they were talking about this June matchup for Poirier. But for me, that would be number one bullshit if Poirier got ahead of a guy winning either of these fights. It's going to be who's got the greater performance out of Max, Justin, Charles, or Arman. And I think they're all legitimate with big wins.
Absolutely. Oh, wait, Max for a 155 title shot.
Yeah.
So,
what more do you want from the man, Joe?
No, I know. I'm just saying that's interesting. That it's not like I'm going to go down a pack to get my belt from Topuria. Like, imagine if he beats Gaethje, like he whoops Gaethje for 25 minutes, goes down, faces Topuria, whoops Topuria, and he'd be like, I want Makhachev.
Joe, Max Holloway to unify the belts in 2024. I'm here for it. No. I mean, I'm getting way ahead of myself. But I think Gaethje's right. Like, he is right there. He's right there.
Yeah.
He can't be anything but right there. Especially, like, obviously the win over Poirier has been propelled a level up by Poirier's win over Benoit Saint-Denis. Like, Gaethje's right there. But with a win over Gaethje, how can you argue against I don't understand how this man can't call his fights. Like, Volkanovski is better than Max Holloway in their individual head-to-head matchup. Max is still the man, a fan favourite, and I don't know how he can't call bigger fights. I just find it strange.
Oliveira Tsarukyan.
Yeah.
This is a real pick from your groin fight, in my opinion, of like, I think this is going to be chaos, to be honest. Because I think Oliveira is just going to charge at this guy. He's just going to charge it. He's going to come out with like a thrust kick immediately. That sort of like leaping thrust kick. I think he's going to immediately pressure Tsarukyan. I think Tsarukyan is going to try and take him down. And I think he's going to see immediately how quickly Charles transitions in positions on his back, underneath, on the ground. It's going to be I think it's going to be a real learning lesson for Tsarukyan in the first couple minutes of this fight. Can you handle the pressure of a champion quality fighter who's going out there to take you out so he can get a title shot? And then when you take him to your realm, how comfortable he is in that area as well. I think that this is going to be a real immediate, learning curve for Sarukian within the first couple of minutes of this fight, and we're going to learn a lot about both of these guys in those first couple of minutes.
Can we just? I mean, can we look at how we got here, Joe?
Shoot.
So, Oliveira.
Yeah.
Of course, it's well documented, but I think it's worth covering. You know, a veteran, a man always regarded as skilled, especially as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, but ultimately brittle.
Yeah, mentally brittle.
He dyes his hair blonde.
Okay. Romania 98.
And suddenly he's gone from, beating Nick Lentz in 2019 to beating Ferguson, Chandler, Poirier at Gaethje in 2022.
And whooping all of them.
Finishing these guys. And of course, Ferguson should have been. Anybody but Ferguson is finished in the position he's putting in those fights.
Yeah.
So that propels him to, fan favorite, superstardom. Another guy who's paid in full. A man that we just loved. We accepted as a champion. He runs into Islam Makhachev, this oppressive force from the East, this smothering Khabib 2 presence. And the tantalizing matchup takes place where you've got, all right, we wanted Tony Ferguson and his elbows against Khabib's top pressure. Yeah. We know how that would have gone in the end. Instead, we got a modern, updated version. We got Oliveira and Makhachev.
Yeah.
And Makhachev smokes him.
Yep.
Now, smokes him, submits him easily. Armbar, I believe.
No, knockdown, head and arm choke.
Head and arm choke.
That was it. Head and arm choke.
Right. For me, that was a comprehensive win and nothing you can call for a rematch off of. You got to go out there, you got to earn it.
And by the way, Makhachev scouted Oliveira. It was the left hook, right straight he kept throwing, or right straight, left hook. That was the only combo he threw, because he knew he could catch Oliveira eventually with it, and that's what he did to the eventual submission. Please continue, Tom.
Well, so the question is answered, all right? What wins between these bearded Dagestanis and these blonde men who fight off their back from Latin America? It's the bearded Dagestani, and it's not even close. But it doesn't matter how good you are off your back, how many threats, how many submissions you can throw up. Good top game beats jiu-jitsu, right? The question was answered. No, it was comprehensive, right?
No, I'm nodding. I'm agreeing.
No,
I mean,
okay.
Also taking point. What was your man's name? Gracie versus Jourdain, when Jourdain just shelled up in the guard. Great top game. Didn't allow for the jiu-jitsu to work. Yeah. What was that guy's name? What was that Gracie's name?
Shelling up is an understatement. It was a disgrace to the sport, but he didn't take any risks. And yeah, all right. So here we are. Sarukian, a man who, outside of that freak knockout that Makhachev succumbed to in his second fight, I think Sarukian's debut was against Makhachev.
Yes,
Amazing scrambles, really hyped. Sarukian has continued that from that. His trajectory is phenomenal. Fantastic top game. Makhachev Mark 2. Khabib Mark 3. All right. And now they're going to meet up, all right? Oliveira, by way of Dariush, who has sunk in the mud, tragically. That win over Dariush has suddenly got a little bit of shine taken off of it, but he's here. He's held in that high esteem. For me, he's facing an existential crisis going back in there against another Makhachev, and what can he do differently, Joe?
Well, I think that also, Makhachev, part of the issues is the stature. Sarukian is significantly shorter than Oliveira. So if it ends up in striking on the outside, he's not going to. I don't know, man. I think can you give me some stats there? What's the reach on Makhachev? Oh, sorry, on Sarukian.
Sarukian he's 170, so we're talking about 5'7", around that. And Makhachev, I think, is 5'10", so 180, and Oliveira is, I think, in between the two of them.
Right.
So you're right, Joe. Yeah, you're right. Oliveira, 5'10", 178, 74 inch reach.
and the reach on Sarukian is 72 inches. You know, I think that sort of reach advantage, it's not even that like the necessary like 2-inch advantage, it's how they fight. You know, Oliveira's a lot more upright with his striking. Sarukian's a little bit more hunched over, he's a little bit more further forward on his feet, so that takes away some of the reach and height as well. And I think that, you know, Oliveira will be able to land long range shots on him from those positions. Are you thinking that Sarukian's just going to take him down, tire him out, finish him, or just control him from a top position? Because I think to control Charles for 15 minutes, I don't think that can happen.
Well, no, because you sub him before that, as Makhachev showed. Joe, what I'm saying...
Hold on, he had to land on him, though.
Well, of course, that contributed to the way that Charles went down. I'm just saying it was
a massive part of it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. But Joe, like, this is sorry. I want to look at that as well. All right, that brittleness, that question mark, that was always there. It came back a little bit when you get blown away. When you get blown away like he did. It wasn't close.
I don't think it was mental brittleness though. Like, he got knocked down.
No, it wasn't mental brittleness.
Pressing into Makhachev. Like, he was taking the fight to him, and then he got knocked down because of that. And it wasn't that like Makhachev was charging. It wasn't like Makhachev Volkanovski where, like, you know, Makhachev took charge and knocked him out. Oliveira was wading forward and meeting him in the middle of the cage.
I guess what I'm saying is when you look at Sarukian's losses, or his opponents in general, show me where Charles Oliveira's approach that you're proposing here works.
Well, we don't know because he's never fought a guy like that.
There's I hold Sarukian in such high esteem.
Yeah.
In all aspects of the sport. I think he's so good. And Charles has ultimately, you know, he's not been found out. That's the wrong word, of course.
I think you're
can't get away
your
from
pick.
that Makhachev loss.
You're revealing your pick here, which is what exactly, Tom?
It's Sarukian. I think any argument to the contrary is very hard to justify based on what we know about these guys. Sarukian is amazing, Joe. Yeah. Like, I know he's turned into a villain. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's a fantastic
He's absolutely amazing. He's like, okay, physically, let's talk about the chin. Let's talk about strength, power, longevity. Let's talk about wrestling. Let's talk about striking. Let's talk about kicking. I just don't see where Oliveira is a long way ahead in any of those aspects. I give the edge to Sarukian in most parts and by a long distance.
Fair enough. And you've gone with what exactly?
Well, I want you to push back. I want you to tell me.
I want to hear your pick. I want to hear your pick.
It's Sarukian by submission.
He's going to sub him. Oh my days. Oh my days. Listen, Tom. I'm going to put this very bluntly. The champ has a name, and his name is Charles Oliveira. Oliveira by knockout. I'm calling it, brother. I'm calling it right now. Sometimes, you know, you go your X's and O's. Sarukian's kicking game, his wrestling game. Yeah, you know what? But sometimes there's an undefinable quality in the air. You see that dust. You see the what do they call it in June? What's it called? The spice. You see the spice going across the tundra, and you smell it, and you're like, and then you're like, yes, Charles Oliveira is going to head kick, knockout Arman Sarukian. That is what's going to happen in this fight. He's going to mash him into the ground.
Put
Oliveira by knockout. I
put that beer down. Put the, what's it called? Spatch. What's that Eastern European stuff you're drinking? Chisk. I'm not gonna make any accusations based off the name of that. But put the Jisk.
Yeah.
Jisk is what you're drinking. Put that down, Joe, because it's gone to your head. That is mental.
But Tom, the champ has a name, and his name is Joe Greenwood, and that's what champs do. I mean, you have picked Jamal Hill to knock out Pereira, by the way. I just want to
more likely than a Oliveira knockout.
Absolutely not. We're
gonna find out.
We are gonna find out that indeed. Anyway, let's move on from that slightly racist thing I just said, and move on to, well, Captain America is here. Bo Nickel, man, the UFC have got a hard on for this guy, haven't they? He is opening the main card to face Cody Brundage. But why isn't this fight on this card? Why isn't that fight on this card? Why is it this fight there? It's because they want him to crush a can on the biggest card of the year that's not a McGregor card. And, they want to announce this guy. I think, though, when Nickel wins this fight, there's no more bullshit fights after this. You have to get him in there with, Paulo Costa or something. Like, you have to get him in there with, like, a legit dude. Because you can't just keep doing these.
What a fight, Joe. What a
Nickel versus Costa.
Bo Nickel versus Paulo Costa.
Should be this card.
God. It
should
could
be this
have
card.
been this card. God, when you say something like that, it just... Ugh.
Yeah.
Because this is an abomination. Bo Nickel's catching a lot of flack. A lot of boos in the press conference.
It's not his problem. It's not. Dana should be booed for this.
Yeah. I sympathise with him. What's he supposed to do? Say no, I'm not good enough. No, don't put me on UFC 300 on the main card. Like the fans will turn against me.
Exactly.
Of course he has to fight who's put in front of him, but who is put in front of him? It's Cody Brundage. So tell us about that man.
Well, not his last fight, but the fight before, he beat Jacob Malkoun by DQ because Malkoun was on top of him, elbowing him, and he elbowed him to the back of the head. And Brundage wanted out of the fight, and he beat Malkoun, my boy, my long-term boy, Jacob Malkoun, master of the single leg.
Is that a strategy that Brundage might be able to employ here against Bo?
Do you know what? Actually, he might be. If he feels anything going back there, he's going to be like, ref, what was that? He might actually be able to do it, because I think he's going to be in that position. I mean, I've picked Nickel by knockout, because I think he's going to take him down and mash him into the ground. Quite comfortably, to be honest. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's just really sad, Joe. Like, we don't need this fight. We saw him fight Jamie Pickett. All right, I know he can crush cans. I know that.
Well, he crushed his plums more than anything else. If you remember that Jamie Pickett fight.
R.I.P. Jamie Pickett, by the way.
Yeah.
He was cut from the roster.
Shameful.
With little fanfare, taken out the back and put down. Cody Brundage, the same could happen to you, my son.
Yes.
I just wish there was some intrigue, other than literally the build-up was like, yeah, I've been through it all. I've suffered defeats. Bo Nickel doesn't know any of that, and I'm going to show him what that feels like. And it's like, man, that is the most tired old.
Yeah.
Just give me something to lock onto.
Yeah.
Give me.
Imagine if he said, yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say that fella, Oligawe, but the really big. Really big lad, really muscular one. I was just trying to. Do you know who I'm talking about?
That's Muhammad
Usman. Give me Muhammad Usman versus Bo Nickel. There you go.
That my days. Yeah, that sounds brilliant.
Right?
Yeah.
There's so many things you could do, and I just can't get behind this fight at all. I don't have anything to offer, really.
If Cody Brundage was saying, I'm going to go out there and make this the grimiest, dirtiest fight you've ever seen, and Bo Nickel's going to have a horrible time in there with me, he's going to dread every single second of being in there with me, that would be brilliant. He's literally going out there and said, it's going to be horrible for you. We ain't going to have a fun time out there. I'm not going to have a good time, and neither are you. That would be brilliant. And basically saying, I will cheat. If he came out and said, I will cheat, I will kick you low, I am going to eye poke you, that would be brilliant. But anyway, Bo Nickel by knockout. Come on, Tom. Let's wrap this up.
Bo Nickel by sub.
Nice. One fight on the prelims, Tom. Hit me with it.
It's not easy, Joe. There's a lot of picks that could be made here. Will you open it up for us?
I'm going to open it up with the fight that's opening the whole show. Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. Davison Figueiredo, former flyweight champion. Not quite the fight I wanted for Davison post Rob Font fight.
This is a step back, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a step back, and I think it's a step back for a reason. Former champ, bit chinny, Davison, who rocked Font, by the way, in that fight. Something that Garbrandt couldn't do to Font. I think Cody's getting slept. I think this could be a bad one. I think it'd be Figueiredo, who's a great minimalist in a way in terms of fighting. He doesn't put a huge amount out there, but when he does, does he put some heavy leather behind it. So very excited to see that. So I think Garbrandt could be a willing participant. It's just always hilarious when you see Garbrandt doing the Ali shuffle, but he does it really slowly. That sort of thing. It's just that could be perfect bait for Figueiredo.
Yeah, I like Cody Garbrandt. I will say I'm a bit partial to him. I'll never, of course, we reference it every time. You have to. The greatest hits. Dominic Cruz when he won the belt.
Yeah, amazing.
My word.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I remember 2017.
It's been a kind of comical downturn since then, with the red mist descending on a few occasions. Obviously built himself back up a little bit with some gimme fights, Chris Weidman-esque. And suddenly Chris Weidman is facing Chimaev. And that's what this kind of matchup feels like to me. And I think you're right to pick a Davison Figueiredo knockout. I'd have preferred different fights with both these guys, but I'm happy they're both on the card. For me, it's not easy. We were talking about this before. I love Aljamain Sterling up at featherweight. Interesting, he's had a bit of redemption with the fans. He was getting some cheers.
Did he?
Getting some cheers at the press conference, yeah. Sympathetic to him, honest man.
Do you know what? I like the fact that he's like open and honest about like the career. Like he gives like quite good insight in that side of things. It's interesting. I think he's an interesting character, and But is that your your pick, Cater?
I would love to pick it, but Joe, Holly Holm is not a woman I could ever pick. That's not a fight that's grabbed me. I just got to throw a few more names out there. Yuri Prochazka. Oof. Always must-watch TV. Turner Moicano. I mean, there are some fights in here. Diego Lopez. But no,
Sadiq Yusuf,
pick... I'm just too curious to see what Sterling can do at featherweight. I don't think he's done. I think he is a featherweight. And Calvin Kattar, he is a quality opponent. Coming back after a long layoff himself. Maybe this can inject a new contender into the featherweight division, which I would love to see.
Absolutely. Right, listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Leave a like, subscribe, comment underneath, and we will get back to you. Give us your picks for the main events of this card. Going through our picks one last time, this time from the bottom up. We both picked Bo Nickel to beat Cody Brundage. I've gone by knockout, Tom by submission. I have picked Charles Oliveira to beat Arman Tsarukyan. Tom has beaten Tsarukyan to beat Oliveira by submission. I chose Oliveira by knockout. Gaethje versus Holloway. We've both picked Holloway by decision. Whaley versus Jean. We've both picked Whaley. Me by knockout, Tom by decision. And in the main events, I picked Alex Pereira by knockout, and Tom regretfully picked Jamal Hill by decision. Was it decision?
It was by decision. Less silly pick than Oliveira by KO, though, so I'm relieved.
Okay.
Relieved that you've humbled yourself like that at the end of the
Fair enough.
End of the preview.
Fair enough. Anyway, listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back soon. Take care and enjoy the fights. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.